We live in a world that glorifies hustle culture, where the value of hard work and being busy is emphasized, but emotional health tends to take a back seat. Many blokes in particular find themselves caught between the desire to provide and the toll that it takes on their mental and emotional well-being. We are conditioned to power through stress without talking about how we feel, but that just creates more pressure. Now, this episode is dedicated to all you blokes out there who know deep down that your mental health is suffering when the demands of life begin to overwhelm you and you metaphorically lose your balance. In this Movember special, I'm going to be expanding on how this loss of balance impacts emotional health and relationships. I'm going to introduce you to some of the limiting beliefs that tend to get in the way, and I'm going to give you 5 steps designed to help you find more balance in your life. Welcome to Man Talk, a podcast of real conversations about life, your life, our life, and the emotional well-being of men. My name is Todd-Collins. I'm the Director of Men and Relationships Counseling, a private counseling practice. Thank you for being here. Sit back and relax and join me for wherever you may be for this latest episode of Man Talk. Hello. I hope you are well wherever you are in this world of ours. Now, this episode is coming to you through the month of November 2024. And November is Movember, which is, of course, the campaign that's been around for many years now, which is raising awareness around men's health and well-being, both physical and mental. So wherever you are in the world, look out for activities or events or maybe ways of being involved in Movember, either in your local community or certainly check out what's happening online wherever you are as well. Now, what does balancing life and mental health actually mean? Now, for most of us, it will be a combination of things. It'll be about managing the demands of work, of relationships, of family, of various other commitments in your world, and at the same time trying to manage and look after your own emotional health. Now, in my conversations with men, you would have heard this many times before in my podcast, that there are certain internal narratives or beliefs that tend to emerge that can get in the way. Now, these narratives often reflect fear or inadequacy or the kind of pressure of social expectations. Now, some examples that tend to swirl around the heads of many men include the following. So have a listen to this and see whether you can recognize anything within yourself or even some of the people you may know in your life. The first one, classically for men, is I'm failing as a provider, where men are feeling the pressure to meet financial goals or professional goals, which has such a huge impact on their self-worth. The second one that comes into play in my conversations often very quickly is the thought that I don't have time to slow down. It's a kind of belief that taking rest or self-care is somehow equivalent to being lazy. And then there's the classic one about talking about pressures or stresses won't change a thing, mainly because there are many men who feel that any kind of emotional struggle is a kind of weakness, so it's dismissed outright. The other one is that I should handle this alone, so avoiding seeking support is a major one, and also a belief that sharing stress or worry or struggles is a burden to other people. And the final one, which is kind of interesting when you think about it, is the idea of stopping working or slowing down means that everything will fall apart. So the fear is that stepping back will lead to some kind of failure in other aspects of life, which of course create more cycles of stress and burnout. Now, these narratives will hinder a whole load of emotional connection and drive isolation in men's lives in particular. Why? Because it affects mental health and well-being generally, but also if you can start to recognize these patterns, maybe you can think about shifting them to more healthier ways of looking after yourself. So here are those beliefs again, just in brief. I should handle things on my own. Seeking help is a sign of weakness. Emotions just get in the way. I haven't got time to focus on myself. These beliefs will prevent you, if this is you, from seeking help, and certainly will stop you from prioritizing your mental well-being. The constant pressure to work hard without addressing mental well-being will lead to stress and burnout, and often feelings of inadequacy. Most blokes tend to tie their self-worth into being productive, which actually can increase anxiety. This mindset will contribute also to this notion of emotionally suppressing your feelings, which can leave you disconnected from the people in your lives, let alone disconnected from your own emotional well-being itself. So the tip here is to begin to recognize any of your signs that are located in these limiting beliefs, but also any signs that are going on that are about burnout. If you're feeling constantly exhausted, or you're disengaging from life, or you find it hard to focus, it may not just be physical. It's a good chance that it'll be mental and emotional too. So start trying to set yourself some boundaries, particularly in terms of work. Leave work on time. If you're working from home, leave your home office on time, close the door, and either way, disconnect from any kind of work-related activities, including emails, after hours, and try and prioritize sleep. So in terms of pressure and burnout and stress and lack of balance, why is it so hard for blokes to talk about it? Now, most blokes are conditioned to power through stress without talking about how we're feeling, which we know creates more and more pressure. There are many men that just shy away from opening up and talking about their mental health because it still feels like it's a sign of weakness. The truth is, of course, that when you're talking about your stress or your worries or your anxieties or your work pressure, it can actually help to relieve some of the tension. Now, if you're avoiding any kind of emotional check-in, this will intensify the stress anyway, and it will also contribute towards many blokes feeling more and more isolated. So men who are not processing emotion will often experience a build-up of frustration or anxiety. And maybe this is something you're aware of in yourself. If you're bottling up your feelings, sometimes the behaviors or the style of communication can look more like anger, or you're withdrawing, or you're looking for ways to emotionally numb yourself. And often when there is expression of some kind, it can come out as resentment or aggression. Now, Movember as a campaign actually emphasizes some really significant key messages about why talking about mental health is so important, particularly for blokes. And I want to just go through with them. There are 4 of them. And again, you may recognize aspects of this in yourself. The first one is this idea that silence can be deadly, that many blokes often struggle with feeling isolated because they are bottling up their feelings. And this is all part of what leads to some more severe mental health challenges. The second message is about breaking the stigma. Now, this podcast is part of that in a way. It's about opening up conversations or normalizing conversations about seeking help that makes it easier for men to access support without feeling the shame. The third message is about early intervention, which saves people's lives. Talking about challenges early on can prevent issues from escalating into a deeper crisis like depression or suicide. And the final one, which is really important, is the idea that connection builds resilience. So when you are sharing your struggles with your friends or your family or with your partner or with a professional, it creates a stronger support network and actually promotes a sense of recovery. So Movember encourages blokes to see talking as a strength, not a weakness. So my tip for you is to consider how you schedule regular emotional check-ins with yourself and certainly with your partner if you're in a relationship. You can ask yourself regularly, how am I feeling today? Or you could ask, what's been weighing me down today? This kind of builds emotional awareness and will help you to release any kind of pent-up tension. And a way of doing that would be to make some notes. You could journal what you're thinking in some of these questions, or you could use the voice memo on your phone to process your thoughts before sharing them with someone you know. Hello. I'm sorry for interrupting this episode. I'm just dropping by, firstly, to ask you a question. What do you think the most common complaint most men and women make about their relationship? Well, it's communication problems. You thought I was going to say sex, didn't you? Well, that is actually a close second. But so many men in particular complain that they get tongue-tied and twisted when trying to communicate or open up with their partner, and often they end up shutting down or just saying the wrong things. So what is good communication in a relationship, I hear you ask? I'm so glad that you did. Well, I've actually created a free guide, Better Conversations for Blokes. It's a quick and easy guide to improving communication in your relationship. It's got heaps of tips and tricks and skills and actual phrases that you can use right now. It's made just for you. You can get the free guide in the show notes. Finish the episode and check out the show notes and find a way of improving your communication with your partner right now. Now, the next tip is all about those very parts of yourself that you may find uncomfortable, but are actually essential. Now, I know the most uncomfortable part of looking after yourself, particularly as a bloke, is accepting when you're vulnerable. Now, in terms of the power of being vulnerable and managing the balance of life, we're looking at why it's so important and why it's so crucial, because essentially being open and honest and authentic in the way you look after yourself, but also the way you communicate with people you love, is actually about being more vulnerable. You know, the idea here is that when men struggle to share their emotions because we view it as weakness, it creates more problems. When men are more able to see their vulnerability as a strength, it will make those connections much more powerful. So there are some tips here that you probably know, and I probably looked at before in previous podcasts, but I want to reiterate them at this time, how to manage your vulnerability. The first thing is to be able to see your relationship with someone that you trust, your partner in particular, if you're with somebody, or a good friend, is to start to open up about what the challenges are that you're facing in balancing your work and your home life in particular, just as an example. That you start to set some clear boundaries, like I mentioned earlier, between defining your time at work and time with your family. That you seek out the support from good friends and your partner, or even a professional, to talk about creating more emotional balance. Now, depending on what kind of work you're doing, there is a value here in looking at how you foster trust and communication and connection with people at work, which is a way of managing what you're most vulnerable with. For example, it may be important to talk about how you delegate roles and responsibilities at work if you are overwhelmed. If you're in a project that you know you're struggling with, that you seek out support and you invite people to help you to complete tasks or delegate some of the responsibilities. Now, the idea of practicing being vulnerable in small ways will help you, particularly when you're overwhelmed. So some examples will be, instead of hiding the fact that you're struggling or you're making mistakes at work, acknowledge it. Acknowledge it with people you trust at work and even your boss if it's safe to do so, and talk about what you need. Ask for help. As opposed to taking on all the pressure on your broad shoulders on your own, ask for some assistance. Express what you're thinking and feeling and most importantly, what you actually need. Now, all these are part of tip number 3 of how you look after what is the power of being vulnerable and managing your vulnerability in a way that's supportive. It's more assertive. It's more authentic in knowing that it's okay for you to seek out more support because, well, it will actually protect you and it will stop you from burning out. So when you think about finding balance in your life, what does it actually look like, and does it really exist? The idea of work-life balance often feels elusive for most of us. And there's a good reason for that, because balance is not about equal parts. It's about knowing when to adjust. Balance is more dynamic. It's not static. Unless you're sitting on a beach for a couple of weeks, it's fairly static. Most of the time, balance will be a movable feast. There'll be some weeks where you need to focus your attention on work. There'll be other weeks where you need to focus your attention on your mental health or your relationship or your physical health and so on. The real key here is to stay flexible and adjust whenever you need to. So tip number 4 is a kind of follow-on from checking in with yourself on a regular basis. I want you to be thinking about these questions. Ask yourself, is your current workload sustainable this week? Or ask yourself, do I have time for relaxation? Or have I got time this week for family? How do I make these work this week? So you focus your attention on all these domains of your life. Now, here are 4 pretty good examples of what balance can actually look like, particularly for blokes. Now, the first one I've mentioned a couple of times already, and it very much is about setting boundaries. I want you to be reminding yourself to say no to extra work to protect your personal time, including committing yourself to stopping work at a certain time every day. The second one is about your physical health and activity. It's about moving your body every day, ideally. How are you incorporating exercise into your daily routine? It honestly doesn't matter what it is. It could be a run, it could be a walk, it could be a combination of both. How are you moving your body today? What are you doing apart from sitting in a chair? Now, you may have a very physical workload or a physical work life, which is cool. And maybe that takes it it looks after itself. So the first one is setting boundaries. Second one is physical movement. The third one is about prioritizing your mental health. So what are you doing in terms of talking about yourself? Are you in counseling, or are you working with a coach? Are you talking to your friends or your partner regularly just about your experience of your life so you can process what you're thinking and what you're feeling, as opposed to just withholding those thoughts and feelings throughout the day, the week, the month, the year, and so on? And the fourth one is about downtime. How are you scheduling moments and times for things that you'd like to do that's not work-related, at the weekends or during the night, in the evenings? Hobbies, family time, and so on. So how do you do this? Now, you could be thinking about it, and you have a brain that somehow takes it on board, and you find ways of balancing all these things. Or you can just use some kind of time blocking schedule for yourself, a bit like using a calendar on your phone when you're scheduling time for work meetings or family events. Start making some scheduling time for these other parts of your life. Boundaries, physical activity, mental health, downtime, and so on. Now, the final step in all of this is all about your mindset. How would you describe your mindset when it comes to looking after the sort of stresses of life, the balancing of your life? There's a lot of information out there about mindset, and I want you to consider maybe what you already do that works well for you. But the idea really here is that mindset refers to your attitude and your beliefs that shape the way you look after and respond to the challenges in your life. So when it comes to managing stress, for example, and how you think about looking at the demands of your life and what you think about your personal relationships, this idea of a positive, growth-oriented mindset will help you certainly to stay resilient, but also adaptable and focus on solutions as opposed to getting completely overwhelmed. So when we talk about strategies that will help you, we're looking at how you're looking after your mind, and in particular, whatever works for you that helps you to be more regulated and more calm. It's not about avoiding stress. It's not about not being anxious. It's about avoiding the buildup of some of these experiences. Now, there are some particular strategies that I want you to consider. If you're not already doing this kind of stuff, I want you to be thinking of a combination of being mindful, certainly setting limits, and actively seeking support when things are getting too tough. But in terms of being more mindful, we know that actually slowing down, slowing your breathing in your daily routine will help you to be more centered if you're going through a stressful period. And there are some ways of doing that, and here are 5 of them. The first one is to look after yourself with being a little bit more kind to yourself, especially when there are setbacks going on. This is as opposed to being overly judgmental or overly critical. So try and treat yourself better as if you would with a friend. That's the whole self-compassion part. The second step is about being more mindful. So if you're actually practicing some kind of regular mindful practice in some way that will help you to reduce the stress, but also calm the mind, to improve your focus and also being mindful of being in the present. It's a mind technique. And if you're not using anything like that, I want you to consider what's available out there. The third one is about your self-talk. If you can replace negative thoughts with more constructive, positive affirmations that encourage you to grow, that's much better than staying stuck in negativity, right? So your self-talk is a really important strategy. The fourth one is about movement. It's about physical exercise. We know that engaging in regular physical workouts or movements will improve and boost your mood and will help you to reduce the anxiety and can certainly maintain some kind of mental clarity. So you need to be moving your body. The fifth one is all about the connection and the kind of relationships you have. To be able to see your relationships with your partner or your close friends or even your family, if it's applicable, the way you can share what you're feeling and seeking support from them. And if not, then consider talking to a professional. So the idea here is to start small, take some regular breaks for yourself every few hours of your day where you can just simply be mindful and breathe. It's a kind of reset button for your mental state. Is balancing your life realistic? Well, I think it's important to understand that balance is really about managing priorities, but also to try and be as flexible as you can. You know, life ebbs and flows. The demands of work, family, and personal time will be shifting all the time. What I think is most important is your ability to adjust, to stay really aware of your physical and mental health and take some small steps towards maintaining some kind of equilibrium. You know, balance is not about doing everything perfectly, but it is about learning to prioritize what's important in any given day or week or month or year. So be kind to yourself, take some time to rest and reflect, and remember it's okay to ask for some support if you need it. Now, I would love to hear your thoughts. Let me know on what you think about this particular episode, and you can find me on Instagram at Man Talk with Howard. If this episode sparks more of your interest, you can check in with the show notes on some more products and programs that I'm developing in helping you to understand yourself. If you want to come and talk with me, there's also a button to book an appointment if you want to. And I want to thank you for listening. Enjoy the rest of Movember. If you like what you hear, please tell your mates. Give me a review wherever you found the podcast, and I'll look forward to catching up with you again in the next episode of Man Talk.